Good evening. Sorry, I've got my phone going. I've got my cell phone going. So welcome everybody. Oh, I see we have, oh, there we go. Yay. Hello. Hello. Sorry, I have to turn my cell phone off. Okay, welcome everybody. This is very, very exciting that everybody's here. Welcome to the discretionary webinar. I'm super excited here to be here tonight. I'm a little bit all over the place because it's been just a crazy day and I've just been bumping up one thing against another. So I apologize if I'm not as coherent as I normally am. My name is Lori Claire. I'm the Admissions and Recruitment Officer, and I'm super excited that everybody's here with us tonight. This is the discretionary webinar. And before I go any further, I would actually just like to acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen peoples on whose traditional lands, territory the university stands, and the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Plasanet peoples whose historical relationships to the land continue to this day. I say that not only in gratitude for these lands that I have the honor of working and living and playing on every day, but I also say it as a reminder to me of the ongoing work that I have to do as a white settler woman who again lives, plays, and loves on these lands. So welcome everybody. You are super, it's going to be super tonight because I have with us this evening Dr. Andrew Newcombe, Dr. Laura Johnston, Christina Friesen, who's joined us, and Navani, who is, I can't pronounce your last name, I'm really sorry, I keep who is a third-year JD student. So what I'd like to do is just ask each of you, maybe what I'll do is I'll call you as I see you on my screen, just to introduce yourself and perhaps tell us a little bit about yourself. So Christina, you are the first that I see on my screen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome on this very dark night. I'm still getting used to the time change. I'm Christina Friesen. I'm part of the Amicus team, and I'm the personal support. I'm a counselor by training. I'm part of the Student Wellness Center, but my home is at law. So I am the counselor for law students. So that's kind of what I do. I've been at UVic for 6 or 7 years now. So it's my great privilege to work with law students every day. I'm always inspired, and it's a really amazing journey to get to watch. So welcome.
Thank you. And Navneet, you're next.
Hi, yeah, I'm Navneet Ravichandran. Like Lori said, I'm a 3L JD student at the faculty, and I'm here because last year I was one of the 3 student members of the admissions committee, and specifically the student member of the discretionary subcommittee. So I'm here to answer any questions people might have about the subcommittee and just from a general student experience.
Thank you. And Andrew.
Hello, everyone. I just want to make sure, Lori, am I coming through okay in terms of the sound? Okay, great. I've had some technical issues recently with my my laptop, so I just want to make sure. Hello, everyone. So glad that you're able to join us this evening. My name is Andrew Newcombe. I'm the Associate Dean at Academic and Student Relations at the Faculty of Law. I've been at UVic as a law prof for, I guess, 20 years now. I was also a UVic law student before, yeah, well, I did my law degree at UVic, and so I've only recently joined or come into the associate dean role, and I'll talk a bit more about that kind of the role of the associate dean in working with students as we go on in the presentation. So I've just been in that role since March, but for most of my time at the faculty, I've been a prof teaching commercial law and international economic law, and have also spent many years on the admissions committee in those roles. So looking forward to our conversation tonight. Thank you.
Emma, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I am the admissions assistant at UVic, and I'm going to be managing the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat, or you can raise your hand too, and we'll get to the questions as they come in. So please feel free to submit as many as you want. Thanks.
And Laura.
Hi, everyone. I'm joining from the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples as a settler without consent to live on these lands. I'm actually no doctorate to speak of, though thank you very much for elevating me in your introduction, Lori. I'm a human rights lawyer, so I have practiced largely representing people who are detained for civil mental health reasons, either through constitutional litigation or human rights litigation. And then I recently founded a nonprofit charity that's doing research and policy work in that area. I've taught mental health law at UBC Law School for a few years. And then just last year, actually, one of the silver linings of the pandemic was being able to offer online classes meant I was able to offer mental health law at UVic last year, and we've done that as well this year for the fall semester. So happy to be here.
Thank you, everybody. So my hope for this webinar is to talk about the discretionary category, talk about how we review them, talk about supports that we have available and how we support our students who are admitted through the discretionary category. And then possibly I would love to have Laura speak to, the mental health and the opportunities on the other side in mental health, human rights, and disability law. Because that's a question I get asked a lot by potential applicants. So I just thought this would be a great opportunity to have that conversation as well. I also want to invite you to ask your questions. Either put your hand up, unmute, and ask your question at any time. Or if you're more comfortable, put it in the chat. I want this to be, I keep thinking I need to find a better word than a safe space, but I want you to feel comfortable to ask your questions here. That's what this webinar is for. So take the opportunity to ask any questions you have about this category. I do want to say right off the top, for all applicants that come into this category, we treat all applications to UVic Law with the utmost respect and confidentiality. I like to reassure applicants within this category that we also hold them with the utmost empathy and compassion and respect. This is not an easy category for people to apply within. And so I like to tell people that we look through a strength-based lens when we are reviewing your application. And that's what I encourage people to do. I get a lot of applicants who come through this category who say to me, I don't want to be viewed as a victim. And I don't want to be judged for coming through this category. And again, I would like to reassure you that that is not how we view these applicants. And I think you'll hear that from everybody who's here to speak to this. We view these applicants coming through this category as people who have overcome incredible barriers with incredible determination, resilience, and strength. And that's what we're looking at in your application, is your ability to overcome barriers and the strengths, determination, and resilience that you've utilized to do that. So I guess what I will do is I will just sort of start off around the discretionary category and just do a general overview of it. And Navaneet and Andrew, anybody, please jump in at any point in time here. But from my perspective, people applying within this category are people who are eligible to apply within this category are people who have experienced extenuating circumstances such as medical, family, socioeconomic, political, historical. That includes racism, institutional and systemic barriers. You are then eligible, any barriers that you have experienced that have impacted your ability to obtain a competitive LSAT or GPA. The importance in this category, the onus is on you as the applicant to provide evidence, a clear nexus for the discretionary committee on what happened. So why are you applying within this category? How did it impact your LSAT and or your ability to get a competitive GPA? And what did you do about it and what's different now? So I often talk, when I'm talking to people in this category, I often use myself as an example. So for example, if I was applying as a discretionary applicant, let's say, I would potentially talk about this. I was 18, high school student, straight A high school student, got a really large scholarship to a university back east, moved away from everything I knew to move back east to go to this university. So I was alone for the very first time in my life. The transition to university was not as simple as I thought it was going to be, resulting in a failed first year. So I went on academic probation after my first year. I didn't share that with my family or any of my friends. I just figured that I could manage it and deal with it, and fix it going into year two. By the end of my first term of year two, I realized I was in really big trouble. I was not improving. I was not eating. I was not socializing. I knew I was in trouble. So I went to counseling services, who hooked me up with health services. I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. I went on some antidepressants. I started counseling. I joined an anti-anxiety group, and I made it through the second half of my year with minimal improvement, not great, but my grades did start to improve. And I decided that I needed to go home. So I went home. I shared with my family and friends what I had been experiencing. I enrolled in a smaller university. I continued with my counseling services, continued with my antidepressant medication, and my grades started to improve. So over my third and fourth year, there is a cumulative improvement in my grades. I graduated last year, so I've taken a year off. I'm exercising, I'm eating really well. I have a really strong support structure here. I know what my triggers are, so that if I do get triggered, I know who I can reach out to and get help immediately. That is what I personally would be looking for in a discretionary application. What happened? What did you do about it? And what's different now? In addition to drawing a really clear line between the reason you're applying in this category and how it impacted your GPA and or your LSAT score. Does anybody have any questions? And Andrew and Navneet, do you have anything that you want to add to that? No? Okay, no questions? Okay, so it's the discretionary category. We are going to be looking at your LSAT. We are going to be looking at your GPA, and I will be calculating your GPA from years 1 to 4 of your undergraduate degree. Those are weighted 50% each. Then we're also going to be looking at your personal statement. Your personal statement is where we're going to be looking at why law. So why are you interested in law? When I go out recruiting, I often ask that question, and I get blank stares like, why are you asking me this question? And then people will say to me, I want to advocate for people. I want to help people. I want to make a difference. And I'll say, those are great reasons, but you could do that going to do a social work degree or a child youth degree or a social justice degree or criminal justice degree. So narrow it down for me and tell me why law. Why law? Why is that important to you specifically? Because we are actually really interested in why that is important to you. And then the next piece is why UVic Law. We are super lucky in Canada that any law school you attend, you're going to get an incredible legal education. So why is UVic Law a specific fit for you where you're at right now, for your long-term career goals and for your legal education? Why UVic Law? And then how are you a good fit for UVic Law? So this is where I say to people, especially in this category, you want to leverage your strengths, your lived experience. What are you bringing to the table that is going to add value to the community, the environment, and the classrooms that we are trying to build here at UVic Law? You have, though people applying within this category have experiences that many other students will not have. You have learned experiences, you have lived experiences, and as a result of that, you're bringing forward strengths and knowledge, empathy, compassion, at levels that other people may still be learning. So utilize that, leverage that when you're writing your personal statement. That's a big ask in 750 words in part A. So use part B to tell us more about yourself. Tell us about your education. Tell us about your work experience. Tell us about extracurriculars. Tell us about awards that you may have achieved. Tell us about travel experiences. Tell us about fun facts about who you are. I just saw the absolute best personal statement I've seen yet, where somebody did it, where it was a reflection of them. It was fun. It doesn't all have to be totally serious. We're actually really wanting to know a little bit about you. So format it in a way that is a reflection of you, that shares your experiences, your knowledge, your expertise, and gives us insight into how you would be a good fit with UVic Law and the community we're trying to build. That's your personal statement. Then we're going to be looking at your discretionary statement. Your discretionary statement is where we want to, this is where you're going to tell us your story. Why are you applying within this category? Provide us with the nexus between why you're applying with this category and how it impacted your ability to obtain a competitive GPA and/or LSAT score, and what's different now. And this, there is no word limit on the discretionary statement, because this is your opportunity to share with the admissions committee why you're applying within this category. And again, always to pull it back to what you're telling us in part A. So I tell people, when you're applying to UVic Law, you want to think 3 words. Authenticity. We want to know you. We don't want to know what's written on our website. We wrote that. That's our marketing. You don't need to tell us what's there. We actually want to know about you. Number 2, vulnerability. Vulnerability, because it takes courage. It takes a lot of courage to share your story with a group of people you've never met before. And then strategic, because you want to use every piece of that application to the best potential you can possibly do. So when you're writing your discretionary statement, write it from here, not here. Don't write what you think we want to hear. Don't write the story you think that's going to impress us. Write, tell us your story. Why law? And what happened to you? What barriers have you had to overcome? How did you do that? And what's different now? What is going to make you, why do you feel, having overcome those barriers, that you are now in a position to engage with what is a really rigorous educational program? One of the biggest mistakes that I see applicants make is not doing their research into a law program. Research not only into the law program and what it can offer you, but the rigors of that law program. Now, I think Navaneet and Andrew and Christina can say, and Laura can say, law is fun, it's amazing, it's incredible, it's an amazing opportunity, but I think they can also say it's very difficult. It's academically difficult, it's spiritually difficult, and it's mentally difficult, and you need to be prepared for that. So yes, we offer a lot of resources here in the Faculty of Law to support all students to be successful in law, but it's also up to you to ensure that you have a really good support group outside of law to ensure that you can come in and really engage with the content that we're teaching and feel supported. So the discretionary statement, there is no limit because we want you to be able to tell your story. Now, having said that, that's not an invitation for you to write an essay. We are reading a lot of applications, so keep it concise, keep it to point. But if it's a 3-page discretionary statement, that's okay if you need 3 pages to share your story. Your references are really important as well. So in this category, you're going to need an academic reference and then a character or employment reference. Again, please do not make the mistake of just emailing a referee and saying, hey, I'm applying to UVic Law in the discretionary category. They need an academic reference. Can you provide one for me? Because that is not going to guarantee that you're going to get the strength of reference that you're going to need to make your overall application to the discretionary category really, really strong. What I recommend is that you reach out to your referees. Hey, I'm applying within the discretionary category to UVic Law. Send them the link to UVic Law so they can have an understanding of what UVic Law is about. And then set up a time where you can actually talk to them about being a reference for you to UVic Law. So that gives you an opportunity for your academic reference, for example, to go and say, hey, do you remember when I did this great research project for you and you thought I was totally amazing? Can you talk about that in my letter of reference? It gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with that referee and not only have them hopefully say yes, that they'll provide you with a strong reference, but you can get a feel as to whether or not this individual is the right person to provide the reference for you. Same with your employer or your character reference. I think that's it for the discretionary. Have I missed that? I think that's it for the discretionary category. What you need to understand with this is we are going to be holistically reviewing your application. So we are going, every piece that you submit needs to be the best possible reference, the best possible discretionary statement, the best possible personal statement that you can provide at the time you submit that application. So when you hit submit with your application to this category, you want to feel comfortable that you're submitting the best of you at this point in time. So you've done the best that you can do, and you know that that's the strongest application you can put forward at this point in time.
Lori, we did have a question that came in the chat and a potential other question. The one in the chat says, are there quotas for this category and are they looked at after the general or the regular category?
Great question. We generally do have a certain number of seats for this category that hasn't been determined yet. I'm hoping to meet with the dean within the next couple of weeks to determine that. What we're doing this year is we will start looking at the discretionary applications in January. No, they are not looked at after the general category. We are looking at all applicants together, but different subcommittees. So what we do is we have one admissions committee and then we divide them. So we will have a separate discretionary committee. We will have, who will be looking only at discretionary applicants. And then we will have a separate subcommittee that will only be looking at, say, JD regular, for example. So all discretionary applicants will come through the admissions discretionary subcommittee.
Thank you. And I saw somebody had their hand up. So do you want to jump in there, Sonia?
Yeah, thank you, Lori, for giving us more of an insight. I had a quick question about the discretionary statement. I know I talked earlier to you and I was going to ask you this before I hung up the phone, but when it comes to the statement, is it okay or allowed to like add attachments like photograph or like a chart or something, or would that have to go in with like supporting documents?
Gosh, Nav and Andrew, I don't know if you guys want to jump in here. My immediate response would be, I guess it would be okay if it tied in with what you were telling us in your discretionary statement. If it was applicable to what you were telling us in your discretionary statement, I don't know, Andrew, Nav?
Yeah, I do remember last year there were files that had graphs and charts within the statement itself. So you could do that, I would say. But like Lori said, as long as it relates to the point that you're trying to make in your statement.
Okay. Thank you.
I would say the same. It may be that, like, I could in some cases, for example, like a timeline could be really useful, because some people have complicated lives, and when you're trying any way that you can present information to explain your story, your journey to the admissions committee. I mean, as long as, of course, it relates to the to buttress your, to kind of to explain your story, then that's those are generally welcome.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, I wanted to share not necessarily like charts, but photographs, but thank you. Yeah, that answers my question.
We did have another question in the chat. If you don't mind doing one more, do we have time for that right now, Lori? Yeah. Okay, so the question was, they're wondering if we have stats from last year, so GPA and LSAT, that we can share. And we do have that report that I can maybe see if I can post some of that in the chat. I'm not sure. There's also a question about how do we calculate GPA?
Right. Oh, okay. Two things. So yes, we can share the LSAT and GPA stats, but the stats that Emma's going to post in here are for the JD regular category. These are not for the discretionary category. In this category, your LSAT and your GPA may not be weighted as heavily based on the reasons you're applying within this category. So again, this is a much more holistic review based on the reasons that each individual applicant applies within the category. So take a look at these stats, but view them through the eyes of the fact that this is the JD regular category, where the LSAT, the GPA, and the personal statement make up the application. The discretionary application is much more comprehensive and in many ways more holistically reviewed. The GPA calculation is a very complex question, and one I probably can't answer, but I'll put my, right now, but what I will do is I'll put my email in the chat, and feel free to email me and I can send you some information on how I do the GPA calculation. Basically, it is weighted 50-50, so 50% your GPA and 50% your LSAT comes out with what we call an index score. I don't know if that totally answers, but I'll put my email in here, and I'll send you an email when I hear.
Okay, and then we have, it looks like Elaine has their hand up first, and then Sonia again. So we'll start with Elaine.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I hope you can hear me okay. I apologize, I'm still on campus tonight. So my question is, I'm working on my discretionary statement, and it is taking me quite a while. Life stories are apparently very messy and complicated. So hearing that you are reviewing them in January, that makes me feel like, well, my goal was to have it in by the end of the month, to have everything submitted. Okay, maybe you just answer it. But if you're reading them in January, like, can I take that extra time now that I know that I can make graphs? Like, that sounds great. I would love to do that if possible, but it might take me some time.
So what happens is, once you submit your application, then Emma and I and Maddie have to kick into gear and start to pull it all together. I have to review the applications. We have to prep them for the subcommittee. So in short, there's a lot of work. Once you hit that submit button, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. So what I recommend to people is, don't wait until January 15th to submit your application. I'm going to be reviewing discretionary applications probably within this next couple of weeks. I'm going to start in preparation for beginning the reviews early in January. So the sooner you get yours in, the sooner I'll be able to review it. However, having said that, I don't want to rush you to submit it until you feel like it's the best, like you're putting in what you want the committee to know. So, if you get it in by the beginning of January, that's going to be fine.
Thank you.
I had another quick question. In regards to, again, the timeline, so those applicants who say are writing the January LSAT, say if we hand in our applications by early next week, it's by the rolling admissions process works as in you'll have my file, but it'll be updated again once my LSAT score would be submitted, which is like, I think February 1st.
Yeah, so what happens is if your file is complete, application next week, I will probably start reviewing those, like I say, within the next couple of weeks. If I feel that your application is ready as it is to go forward to the committee, then I will identify it that way, and it will be one of the first ones that go forward in January. If I feel that you've indicated that you're writing in January and I feel that probably, I want to wait and see what your LSAT is, then I may wait until I get your updated LSAT in February. So there's all sorts of variables here. Regardless, there have been situations as well where I've taken a file forward to the committee and they've seen that you're writing in January, and the committee members may say, let's wait until we get this January LSAT result. So then I'll just pull it back and hold it. The advantage of getting it in before January 15th is that it gives us time to prep your application, for me to review it and get it ready for the committee.
Okay, perfect. Also, another question. I know I did read a few threads online, which it says it varies, but is there like a specific amount of seats that are offered for the discretionary category, or does it vary every year, just depending on how many applicants there are, how many seats are being offered?
Andrew, do you want to answer that one? I think you're still muted.
Sorry. In the past, the number of discretionary seats has varied between like 10 and 15 seats are allocated to the discretionary category. I think that said, there is always flexibility in terms of the numbers. It depends. Every year is a bit different in terms of the number of discretionary applications. And I guess the reason I had my hand up was just to reassure the applicants that as long as you do submit your documents, your application on time, your application will be reviewed. It will be holistically reviewed. And so, yes, I mean, there is a rolling admission process, and like sitting on the discretionary committee, we get, as files are complete, they come into the process, and then we'll make decisions. But sometimes those decisions will be we'll make an offer. In other cases, it'll be a deny. But then in other cases, it'll be we'll hold the file because we know that it's a rolling process, and we know that there are going to be other applications coming, and there always is. So just want to reassure you that like every application is, it goes through our review process. So you don't have to worry about like not getting it. If submit it when it's ready, and it will get reviewed.
sorry, I had another quick question. I know schools do like drops of your lowest 9 credits sometimes, or 12 credits, depending on if you're coming in with the full 4 years or 60 credits. Is that the same? Would that apply for the discretionary category as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So I use a sliding scale depending upon the number of units credits that you've completed, and then I will.
Okay, and then
You were cutting out a bit there, Lori.
Oh, sorry. I will use a sliding scale depending upon the number of units or credits that you've completed. I will discount some of your lower grades to give that GPA a boost.
okay, perfect. And say you're graduating in, like, this is your last semester, and then would I have to send my transcript in December once it's updated, or could I send like an official transcript for my past grades, excluding this semester, to you with my application, so it's submitted, and then just update the file once in December, once my grades have been updated on my student file?
Yeah, great question. So we take unofficial transcripts at this point in time. At the point of application, it's just unofficial transcripts. So you would submit an unofficial transcripts which would reflect the fact that you have courses in progress right now. And then in January, I say to people, wait until all of your final grades have been submitted, and then submit another unofficial transcript which shows your September to December grades, because those are the last grades that I will use in your GPA calculation.
Just to clarify again, so unofficial, not official, like even at the end, you don't want an official one?
If you are offered a seat and you accept a seat, then we will request official transcripts at that point in time. But we're trying to save you a little bit of money here by, not having to submit now. And we'll just do it off of unofficial transcripts.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, looks like we have iPad. iPad has their hand up.
Hi, I'm sorry, my name is Jimena, and I actually have a question regarding the LSAT. Well, talking about a little bit personal experience, I started studying English a few years ago. So for me, language is a barrier while taking the LSAT. Like I tried the exam from Puerto Rico, which is in my first language, and I can see a huge difference in the score when I do it in my first language and when I do it in English. I can catch on things much more faster. So I was wondering, is it a barrier considered by you while like looking at the LSAT scores?
Okay, sorry, just to clarify. Sorry, can you clarify that again? So you wrote in,
Yes, of course.
Your own language, and then you wrote in English.
Oh no, I practice in both because we are not allowed to do the exam from Puerto Rico,
Right.
but it was on the website because of COVID. So I was able to practice it. I was able to do it as a practice.
Yeah.
And I could see the difference. For me, at least, was a huge difference between English and Spanish.
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course. Do we take that into consideration? Unfortunately, well, my experience at this point in time, no. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that in terms of the discretionary category, of course, we always take into account the fact that if English is not your second language, and that would be sort of one of the factors in the discretion. So it's very, very common. Of course, we have lots of applicants who are either recent immigrants. English is not their first language, and we recognize the fact that is the case. So it's definitely a factor which can be assessed in the holistic assessment. Like we would not expect someone, who's not an English native, for whom English is not their first language, to be able to perform at the same level as someone whose English is the first language. So yeah, I think the important point is to note that in your application about your language abilities, and that's a factor in the holistic assessment.
Thanks, Andrew. There's a couple of things here that, thank you, Emma, for pointing these out. A couple of things I just want to bring forward. One is, in this category, we're often asking applicants to, I say, share your story, and basically share the reasons why you're applying within that category. And that's asking you really to be vulnerable. And so there's a really, when I'm talking to potential applicants, there's a really fine line between how much you need to share in that discretionary statement, and how much supporting documentation you need to provide, and the depth of information in that supporting documentation. And I apologize, that's one thing I forgot when I was mentioning discussing the application previously. So yeah, we ask for you in the discretionary category to share with us the barriers that you have experienced. I'm always aware and try to be very cautionary about, it's not our intention to ask to re-traumatize you by reopening old wounds in sharing this. So, but it is important that you, as the applicant, provide enough information to the committee so that they can clearly see a nexus between why you're applying in this category and how it impacted your ability to obtain a competitive GPA or LSAT score. And then on the other side of that is the supporting documentation. So I'll use myself again as, my example of having anxiety and depression. If I was applying as a discretionary applicant with that, I would be looking for perhaps a doctor's note, or a psychologist's note, or a counselor's note, or a note from a priest even, for example, that's basically said, between this date and this date, Lori was suffering mental health. If I was comfortable, I could authorize that individual to say it was anxiety and depression, that I had been seeing counseling for this period of time, and that the counselor really felt that I was in a stronger position, and in a position really to take on the rigor of law school. We do not need psychological assessments, for example. Like, that is way more information than the committee needs, and it's uncomfortable for us to actually have that level of information. So I've talked to many applicants who say, you know what, I'm okay with it. I'm totally okay with sharing this information, and I'm really impressed with that. I'm not okay having that level of information about a potential applicant. So it is a privacy piece. So I do want you to be aware that we do need to know why you're applying within this category, and how it impacted your LSAT or GPA, and we do need supporting documentation. We don't need really intimate details about what you have experienced and those barriers. Navaneeth and Andrew, do you have anything that you want to say to that?
Yeah, I just want to mention on that point, a lot of times, actually most of the time, the members of the committee are not qualified to really understand what the language is. So if we get sort of a psychological evaluation or any other sort of intimate medical details, we're not doctors. The terminology doesn't make sense to us. And so even if you submit that documentation, it really won't help and won't pay a lot of attention to it. So again, going back to what Lori said about privacy, there is sort of this line that needs to be drawn between helping us make that connection, but also maintaining sort of your own privacy in terms of what you've experienced in the past.
The only thing I would add is that sometimes, having sat on the committee, applicants have sort of left out. So there are time gaps in the application. So so there'll be like something happened, and then there's sort of this, maybe there's like a 4-year period, and there's like nothing in the application that kind of talks to sort of what happened or what the person was doing during that time period. So just having, so you want to tell your story, and so that we have a kind of a sense of what was happening in your in your life, so that it is a so the story makes sort of sense to us. Otherwise, the committee members will have questions. Well, what happened between this period and this period? So just and again, that doesn't mean you have to go into great detail. You can just say, well, and then I worked here for 4 years, or something along those lines, just so that there's a kind of a clear kind of that clear timeline, that so the committee can follow sort of the story of of your journey to the application to the law school application stage.
Yeah, a great example would be sort of a 2-page letter from a medical professional addressed to us, kind of stating and verifying your treatment for a particular, let's say it's mental illness or anxiety disorder, your treatment for that, and verifying that you've gone through that, and a timeline like Andrew was speaking about, rather than sort of a 10 to 15-page detailed diagnosis and prognosis. That's something that we don't need, but that 1 to 2-page letter can definitely help.
Looks like we have a hand up from Brian, and then Sonia after that.
Hello, my name is Brian. I have a question about the discretionary category. Thanks for taking the time to present today. The question is the supporting documentation that whenever someone joins us or leaves, all the people's pictures and names move around. Lori Clear, I met you, Lori, a couple of years ago. We spoke a couple of times, and I had applied for this category, and I wasn't successful. It was at the start of the pandemic, and I was medically releasing from the military. And regarding supporting documentation, I'm hearing some contradictory advice from the panelists. On one hand, it's you need to support your application with supporting documentation for medical professionals. And on the other hand, it's like, we don't want to know anything about your medical history because we're not doctors, we're not psychologists or psychiatrists. And it's like, but get a 2-page letter from your doctor, which doctors don't normally do, and they won't do. And what is a doctor going to write if they can't put the detailed medical information in that the panel is not qualified to adjudicate? So for me, I'm hearing all that's applicable for this application, and that could be wrong. It's only mental health that's being discussed. What about physical injuries and traumas? Like, I was medically released after injuries acquired in the military service. And does this discretionary category also include part-time? So that would be my second question. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. That's great. So to clarify, the supporting document, I think for me personally, I can't speak for anybody else. For me personally, some of the supporting documentation, I'm receiving 54-page psychological evaluations on people that's way more information than I or the committee. I'm even comfortable sharing with the committee. That's way more information than is necessary. We do need some type of supporting documentation. I've had people who have said, can I submit page 1 and 2 of my psych eval? And because that highlights what I went in for, how long I was under treatment, and where I'm at now. Perfect. I don't need the remaining 52 pages of that document. So yes, we do need supporting documentation. What we're asking you is to be aware of how much you want to share with the committee, and how much does the committee need to see and understand in order to understand why you are applying within that category. Does that make sense?
So again, my question wasn't quite answered. Unless that is the answer. Let me try to formulate it better. Does one have to have a mental illness diagnosis in order to apply for the discretionary category?
No.
I have physical injuries and
Yeah.
illnesses that are invisible.
Yeah.
And I am wondering, well, some are visible, quite visible, which anyway, I'm not going to go into it on here. It's being recorded. And others are invisible, which is all documented by MDs, and past psychologists. However, what documentation do you specifically need? Do you need a list of diagnoses? Because I supplied something from a regional surgeon in the military, which was very brief. It's like 2 sentences because they're not allowed to disclose anything, and just said that I was undergoing treatment and seeing specialists. So basically that could be seen as a negative against me, as, oh, this person's still undergoing treatment. Well, that's why I'm applying for the discretionary category, is because I am injured and I will always be injured. So it's kind of discrimination if you're not allowing people with current disabilities that are not cured from applying to law school. I'm not saying that I was discriminated against. I'm just saying that it's obviously there's barriers which were explained in the personal statement and or the discretionary statement. I'm not sure how pictures and graphs would apply to that, and that's not something I intend to do. I'll just use my words. But unless you want pictures of me almost dead in a hospital for 5 months, I don't know what kind of pictures you need.
I see Andrew's got his hand up.
So, Brian, I guess, one thing I would say is that, the discretionary category is, it's very, very, very broad in terms of the types of challenges and disabilities under which, that are applicable. We have applicants who have mental disabilities, learning disabilities, physical disabilities, addictions, family. So, and of course, the documentation that relates to each of those specific types of challenges that have been faced are going to be different. At the end of the day, of course, the documentation is there to show that there has been whatever the condition or challenge has been, and that has somehow that has affected your academic achievement or your LSAT. I guess at the end of the day, in terms of the holistic assessment, once you've established, one of the first things the committees do is that we look at, okay, does this person qualify for the category? Have they, is there a physical or mental disability? Have they had a challenge that has adversely affected their academics or LSAT? So that's kind of the first sort of stage. Then once we kind of get past that stage, that there's of course the sort of the discretion, the statement, and sort of why do they want to come to law school, and then there's the question of do they have the potential to succeed at law school? And sometimes, depending on the nature of the disability or challenge. So, for example, sometimes we have people who applied who have been have addiction issues or drug addiction issues. And so if you have a current drug addiction, we're not going to admit you because unless you've kind of shown that you have gone through treatment and are able to prove that you have the ability to succeed at going to law school. Of course, other types of physical disabilities are as you like maybe in your case or are permanent. And of course, we will. The law school will, work to accommodate students, whatever their disabilities might be. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. I guess I'd say that because the category is so broad, it's really difficult to speak in about every case will have different types of documents that will be available that are going to be useful in terms of demonstrating sort of that you kind of fall within the category.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Oh, sorry, I see Daniela has her hand up, sorry.
Actually, we had Sonia first. She's been waiting, and then Daniela.
Sorry, just a really quick question. I actually saw another form for another school, and another student who's also applying for a different law school. She brought up a pretty good point where sometimes you have like barriers in life that you never had the opportunity to, get medical help, or especially when it comes to mental, because in some cultures, mental health is very taboo. And I wanted to know, in that case, like what documentation would be needed? And also just kind of following up on this question, again, some medical professionals don't, they literally have said to me before, like, this is what you're gonna get. I don't have time. I have too many patients. So I just want to know, would that put me at a disadvantage if my doctor or whatever physician I'm asking says this is all I'm gonna give you?
I'm going to pass that one over to Andrew and Navneet.
Thanks for the question, Sonia. I mean, absolutely. We see that type of situation in applications where you have, situations often, where a person struggled through university, and only, kind of later, kind of realize that maybe they were suffering some type of let's say like a learning disability, and then you have the additional issue in order to get the psychological reports on learning disabilities. I mean, those can be really, really expensive too. So there's that issue, and some people may not have the economic means to be able to get those types of diagnoses and reports because of their economic circumstances. And I guess I think when I've been on the committee, the committee is realistic and sympathetic to applicants who have done their best to get the documentation that is available to them, and is able to explain sort of the limits on what they can provide. I think the point is to explain, if there's limitation in documents, to explain why why you're just not able to get more documentation. And that may be because of limitations in terms of the medical professionals, what they're willing to say. That might be because of economic circumstances where because we know that people with lots of money can pay for medical services. They can go down to the States or pay for different types of of reports. So I think there's a recognition of that, and we're very, very alive to both the like cultural issues around mental health, around economic barriers, and the issues around undiagnosed issues which may have affected past performance. I'm not sure if Navneet, do you want to add anything just in terms of your experience sitting on the committee?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the reasons why the discretionary statement doesn't have a word limit. It's so you can sort of express all of your circumstances and all of your all of what's led to the situation, and that includes the documentation, or in this case, perhaps a lack of documentation in your application. So you mentioned that in some cultures it is unfortunately still taboo for mental illness and seeking treatment for mental illness. I've looked at applications where that was specifically addressed in the discretionary statement, saying, I haven't seen a psychologist. I haven't gone to be diagnosed because I'm worried about the repercussions for my family if I do go and seek treatment, and what my surrounding community will think about me. So we have taken that into account, and while lack of documentation is not ideal, it's definitely not fatal to your application, and we will take all of those circumstances. Again, it is a holistic process, and everything that you explain in a discretionary statement, we will take into account.
Perfect, thank you. I know like a lot of people have been asking about like medical and like MD holders getting you these doctor's notes, but say you like literally talk to like an advisor at school or like a counselor at school, would that be documentation where you're allowed to present? Because I know a lot of people don't go to like therapy outside of that because it's expensive. Some people are under like their parents' medical plan and they're not allowed to like go see these professionals. So is it okay if you ask like a school counselor or like just somebody who's technically not like a doctor, but they still were helping you in a sense?
I'm happy to address it. Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. The documentation does not have to be from, it doesn't have to be from a medical professional. And any type of documentation that kind of supports, that where you told someone, a counselor, about the issues that the challenges you were having, even though of course that you didn't for whatever reason did not seek professional therapy or assistance at that time.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, I don't know if it was I think Daniela was next.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet everyone, see everyone. I just had a quick question. I know we've been talking about the discretionary statement, but for myself, since I know I fit into a few of the different discretionary categories that are listed within the discretionary supplemental form, what I did, and I just want to make sure that it was okay, I instead split it up. So part 1, part 2, part 3, and then I outlined my story within those parts, just because I thought it would keep it more organized instead of having one statement just flowing through everything. I thought maybe it'd be easier to read, just knowing how each specific circumstance impacted me and my GPA and LSAT score, instead of having it as one kind of longer statement.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it's completely up to you how you do that. As long as, again, circling back, you provide a clear nexus between what happened, the reasons you're applying.
Lori, you're cutting out.
Oh, am I? Sorry, same thing, laptop. Yes, it's fine.
I would just add, in terms of the applications I've reviewed, often that applicants will do that, and because of course, in many in many cases, like the categories are not like, it's not that you have to just fit yourself into one category. I mean, there's overlapping sort of intersectional challenges, and so separating those out, I think, does make it very clear for the committee reviewing the application that you have identified, two or three contributing factors that have affected your performance.
Elaine?
Yes, hi. Thank you. Not to fixate on the documentation piece a little bit too much, but I just wanted to kind of summarize what I've been hearing and make sure that I'm on the right path with it. So I'm a bit of the opposite situation, I feel like, that was already described, where to me, it's like, I'm not sure how far down the rabbit hole of documentation I should go. Because it's been, I've had a history of, from inpatient care to ongoing maintenance of a chronic lifelong condition, which has been managed very well for the past couple years. And that's what, my story that I'll be describing in the statement is. So at this point, I'm going to be relying on one piece of documentation from a psychiatrist, because I figured a doctor would be my best bet. And it's one that I've worked with the most recently. And I'm just stopping there. And I just want to make sure that's okay, rather than, because if we want to go there, I'm willing to, and I can contact more of the village that has helped me be here today. So just want to make sure.
Yeah, and what I mentioned to another applicant with a very similar question is you can always put something in your discretionary statement that says, if further information is required, please feel free to contact me.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And actually, you just remind me of another question I have then, because I saw that there's, I forget the name of it, but there's request for two people's information, which are verifiers, I suppose, of what I've included. And that actually made me pause for a moment, because there isn't like a huge pool of people in my life that that would be on that list. So I have two that I could submit, but I just want to make sure that they'd be able to represent like the details of what I included accurately. And if that's even what they would be asked if they were contacted, like if they know the broad strokes, if that's enough.
I mean, from my experience, and maybe Andrew, I've only been with law for 2.5 years, and in that time period, we've never utilized verifiers. So, but maybe, I don't know, Andrew, if you've known if we've ever used them before?
Only rarely, just and maybe where there's questions about sort of maybe gaps or inconsistencies in the story, and just there's kind of lingering questions which the committee just wants to have, which have particularly maybe where the applicant has not been able to provide sort of documentation that, but I would say generally it's rare it's not kind of like it's not like you're already submitting reference letters, so it's not like it's not a kind of Lori and Emma are not kind of calling all those people for kind of additional verification.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question for Christina and Laura. And I just thought it would be nice to hear about the gifts that applicants in this category bring to the field of law, to the School of Law, and perhaps to the field of law.
Well, I guess I can jump in. Is that okay, Laura? Yeah, I think I'm always, I think people bring so much from their personal experience to law. And I think oftentimes when law is challenging, your meaning and purpose for being here, like why you're here, why it's important to you, is something that helps carry students through when the workload is heavy and when people are tired in mid-November. I think at times where you sort of go back to that, and like anything hard that you do in your life, you know, your motivation is pretty key to what, you know, makes you fall down and get back up again, and makes you keep going, or makes you go talk to that professor, or makes you come and talk to me, or go talk to Andrew, or, you know, do all that all the connecting that you need to do when you're here. And I think people's that motivation is really, really key. I think if you've struggled with something in your life, if you've sailed through life, you've learned some things. And if you haven't sailed through life, I think that you have learned a great number of very important skills in being here. So I see students that come in this category as having enormous strengths, and they're willing to work hard. They've fought to be here. So that's a pretty powerful beginning, I think, to come into it that way. I think also generally, if you struggle with something, you've also had to reach out to help to other people. You've had to get information. You've had to learn something. You've had to recover from something. You've had to, you know. So I think those you earn that. So I think you bring a great amount to it. So I think there's a lot of strengths. I think using the resources that are here. There are a lot of resources here. There's a lot of support here, all, you know, in the Faculty of Law, but also throughout the campus, the larger university as well. So being able to access and use those resources as they should be used is a very powerful thing. And I think if you've struggled with something, you've had to do that in your life. And I think that's an enormous understanding that, yeah, so I think the meaning and purpose piece, and I think learning, you've learned your strengths. You've also sometimes learned things you struggle with, and you've learned how to manage those things. You've had to overcome things. That's some pretty good life lessons to come to law with, I think. So I see it as a great strength. I think oftentimes students think, I find the hardest part is that sometimes when I work with students who've come in this category, is really seeing themselves as strong. Not as saying, well, I came in this category, you know, sort of like, you know, it's like, no, I really, like, when I hear people's stories, I'm always so amazed and moved by them. So, and I think they offer so much learning, and they're a gift to other students as well with what they've experienced in life. So I'm a big fan. So.
Yeah, I similarly have found that the classroom environment is so enriched by people with experience of raising kids, people with experience of injury and disability, people who've used substances and had health issues with using substances, people with other professional backgrounds. The greater the diversity in the classroom, the more wealth of sort of knowledge and expertise and perspectives we bring. So I sort of echo what Christina said about the learning environment being enriched by people with diverse life experiences. But I think what I can add is some perspectives about how much you bring to the practice of law from having had those experiences. In particular, in the area that I work, so primarily I represented people who were detained in involuntary psychiatric settings. And I think that that's an extraordinarily special relationship, because for most psychiatric patients in that moment, you are the only consent-based relationship they have. They have their clothes taken away from them, their cell phones, their choices, their dignity, their freedom of movement. They have healthcare sort of forced on them. Everyone around them is trying to convince them of something or change something about them. And as their legal advocate or lawyer, you get to say, I am literally just here to stand in your corner with you. I take my lead from you. I take all my instructions from you. I don't do anything without your permission. And there's something incredibly powerful about that in terms of how much you can offer to people in that situation. But if you are someone who has lived experience of, you know, being homeless for a period of time or having experienced psychiatric treatment yourself, particularly involuntarily, and knowing just exactly what that means. The lived experience expertise you bring, as well as your legal expertise, is just phenomenal. One of the first cases under the charter in Ontario that established decision-making rights and autonomy for psychiatric patients was brought by someone who had experience in his past as a psychiatric inpatient and then was advocating as a lawyer. And I think that just goes to speak to sort of the incredible importance of lived experience expertise. And if you can bring that along with your legal education, there's sort of no limit to how much you can offer in those situations to people who are struggling as well.
Thank you both. That's amazing. So we've got about just less than 15 minutes left. I'd like to open it up. You've just got a wealth of information here. Please take the opportunity to ask questions about the application process, Navneet is a third-year student here. He could speak to the experience of being a student at UVic Law. You just have a great opportunity. So, and I see, Brian, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
At any given time, how many people in the discretionary category does UVic have in a program? And by, I guess, first year, second year, third year, or total?
Andrew, do you have that info handy?
I don't have like the exact, I don't have, Brian, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I would probably say between 45 and 50 of the student body. Just because on the basis that historically around 15, up to 15 students per year, and it's not, and of course we do have the some students in the discretionary category, just like students in in any admission category can attend, can apply or ask to attend on a part-time basis, and students in the discretionary category, because of their particular challenges, are probably more highly represented in the students who are on part-time basis, just because of course, if you have a physical disability, if you have care responsibilities, if you have learning disability, you have other challenges in your life to deal with in addition to law school. So that said, I guess I'll make the point that in terms of our discretionary students, having been in the associate dean's office, the success rate for those students is very, very high. Like the vast majority of students who, Laurie and her team do a great job, and the admissions team, I say, do a great job. Those who are admitted, generally do graduate. The other point I wanted to make is generally, like, once you are admitted, the fact that you are admitted in the discretionary category is, well, one, it's private and confidential, and there's no distinction is made between students once they are admitted. Of course, some of our discretionary students, just like some of our students who are admitted in the discretionary category, just like in other categories, will use the university services, and in particular, because of students with learning disabilities, for example, will often register with the Center for Accessible Learning, or CAL, so that they can get various types of supports. Same with students with other types of physical disabilities, other types of responsibilities. So, but you know, that of course is it's always up to the student to disclose, you know, their discretionary status. Like other students, other your profs, you don't know what your admission category is, and everyone is, you know, just treated as a 1L student entering the program.
So we have Sonia with the hand up, and then another question in the chat after Sonia.
I had two quick questions. I've been talking a lot today, but I've like written a bunch of stuff down that I wanted to get answered. In regards to applying discretionary, say you do apply discretionary for just life circumstances. However, your GPA and LSAT are considered maybe competitive in a sense. Will you also get considered as a regular applicant in the general category? Or does this limit you just to discretionary seats? Because I know some schools like write that down in the application saying if you apply discretionary, you're not just considered for discretionary, but also for the general category if you meet the requirements. So just wondering about that one.
It's a good question, and it's one that we're working actually on developing some guidelines around right now. Last year we did have one, I think, did we not meet? That was
we had two
that were very competitive, would have applied in discretionary that we felt would have been very competitive in the regular. So we did move them over. So yes, it is possible that we may do that.
Okay. And also my second question is for Laura. I know you talked about how in the beginning that you had the chance to teach in the fall the mental health law course because of the remote learning. I was wondering if you were actually going to be teaching, because I'm applying for fall 2022, if you were going to be teaching courses going forward about, you know, about mental health law and so forth.
It's really a question for Andrew and the rest of the faculty that arrange these sort of more specialized classes.
Yeah.
My understanding is that because mental health law isn't offered by a faculty member, sort of on staff there at UVic, it's offered by a sessional, that it tends to be offered every other year. It was a bit of an exceptional situation because of, I think, pandemic and course coverage that we ended up doing back-to-back years. I'm always happy to offer the class. I love teaching, and I think there needs to be way more people in the legal profession who know about mental health law, but it might depend a lot on like course offerings in the future. Maybe that's something Andrew could speak to a little better.
Okay. Because I know talking to just a couple of, I work at a law firm, and talking to a couple of the lawyers, they are older graduates. And when I was bringing up just like another school offers a mental health law course and domestic abuse, and they were like blown away, and they were so confused like how that was like a course, because they were so used to just having like the concrete like courses. So yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting how a lot of more schools are leaning more towards mental health, social justice oriented classes, just to broaden the horizons for students who I think have a little bit of a different social justice or even like nonprofit organizational backgrounds.
Sonia, I'll just, I mean, just following on from Laura, I mean, certainly it's been a very, very, very popular course. We don't have someone currently on faculty who teaches the course, and so it's lovely to have Laura join us, and particularly now with, you know, our experience with online learning, the ability to have you know, experts like Laura be able to teach courses at our faculty, you know, from Vancouver is something that we, you know, is sort of our relationships that we are certainly wanting to continue. I think that's one of the great lessons, one of the things that the good things of coming out of COVID is sort of this kind of on the ability to have a bit more, just be able to draw teaching and experts from, really all across the world now to teach courses where traditionally the model would be very much having to, have someone, come across and physically be, present in the law faculty.
So we have a couple more questions in the chat, and I'm aware of the time here. So I'll try to get through that quickly. There's one that says, what is the acceptance rate of the discretionary category? Is it lower than the regular category? And then Ben has a question after that.
Sorry, is the acceptance rate of the discretionary category lower than the regular category?
Yes, and generally, what is that rate?
Oh, yeah. I can say, so to give you an example, we had 174 applicants in this category last year. How many did we admit? 15, Andrew? I think 15 were admitted. So sorry, it's my brain's turning into mush. I don't have the percentage, what that would be as far as percentage. But I hope that helps. I hope that answers it.
So, Laura, what's the acceptance rate in the JD category?
Okay, so well, let's put it this way. For last year, we had 1,400 applicants last year, and we admitted 115, I think, is what we admitted. So for every 2.5 offers that we put out, we filled a seat. So again, I don't know if that's really getting to what you're looking at.
I think it's about the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I think it's probably around the same. It'll really depend. Like each year, that the discretionary application numbers can vary quite a bit. So I think in some years it might actually be a higher acceptance rate, and some years it might be a bit lower.
Yeah.
Do you recall how many discretionary applicants there were last year, just due to like COVID, like the peak of COVID was happening last year?
How many applied because of COVID?
No, I just like know like a few more may have applied because of COVID in discretionary categories. So I was just wondering how many, what was the total number of applicants that applied?
Last year, I think it was 174 in the discretionary category.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Also, another question, I'll just turn on my video because I feel like it's nicer to have a face when someone's talking. I know some students have written the LSAT Flex exam, and some students have written the LSAT, which is the newer version that has the experimental section. And I'm not too, are they still looked at the same? Like it won't be like, oh, you wrote the LSAT Flex and you got this score, and like, okay, you wrote the experimental section with the 4 sections, you get this score. Like they're the same tests, right?
Yes, that's correct. And in fact, LSAC had an audit done on the Flex LSAT, and it has come back being absolutely equivalent to all LSAT exams. So yes, it will be there. We don't differentiate between whether you wrote the Flex or the, which one you wrote. We just look at your LSAT score, and we take the highest LSAT that you have completed within a 5-year period of applying to UVic Law.
And do you look at the other takes as well, or just the highest?
We use the highest in the calculation of your GPA. We do take a look at the other ones. That is information that is available to the committee, but generally, as far as calculation, we use your highest.
Okay.
Okay. I think Ben has his hand up. Go ahead, Ben.
Hi, yeah, thanks. So I apologize ahead of time if any of this was answered earlier on. I unfortunately wasn't able to make this whole session, but hopefully these questions are fairly straightforward. The first question is just a simple yes or no. I was just wondering if UVic has any available data on the median LSAT score for the discretionary category. I know you have some great data available on the demographics for the regular category, but I haven't been able to find any information on that. And then the other question I had was, do you ever conduct interviews with particular discretionary category candidates after they submitted their application, and you might have like further questions? Is there, a formal interview that might occur to decide, if someone's just on the cusp, whether you want to admit them or not?
Great questions, Ben. No, we don't. So to answer the first one, we don't publish a median average because there isn't really a median average in this category. It's a discretionary category and holistically reviewed. So again, we look at that LSAT and that GPA based on the reasons why you're applying within that category. So they can vary quite a bit right across the board. And I'm sorry, I can't remember what your second one was, what the second question was.
My second question was for candidates within the discretionary category, do you ever conduct interviews to determine whether they should be admitted or not?
Right. No, we do not. Up to this point, we have not conducted interviews. We really rely on your application in its entirety to really be you as if you were being part of an interview. So we really look at that, your overall application, to answer any potential questions that we might have for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I see we've gone over time here. So I'll throw it out one last time. Does anybody have a last question? No, then I'd like to really thank everybody for being here this evening. Laura from Vancouver, Navneet, from, I actually don't know where you are.
Victoria, yeah. In-person school, I have to be back now.
Right, that's right. I'm so used to looking. And Andrew, who is on holidays right now. So I really, really super duper appreciate you being here. And Christina, thank you so much. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have everybody here. And of course, all of you who are participating tonight. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is in the chat. If you have any further questions, or if I can't answer them, then I will refer them on to somebody who can. So thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you tonight. Have a great evening.
Night.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Trying to figure out how to stop the recording.